I stepped into my wife's office, my heartbeat steady, my steps measured, but my mind was a whirlwind of emotions. The air carried the familiar scent of her expensive perfume, a fragrance I once loved, one that used to remind me of home. Now it smelled like power, control, and deceit. It clashed with the sterile odor of the office, a place where I had spent too many years pouring my soul into a company that never truly valued me. Or maybe they saw me but never appreciated me the way they should have. The city skyline stretched beyond the glass walls, sunlight reflecting off the sleek furniture, making the space feel even more impersonal. Everything about her office screamed authority, control, and, at this moment, victory. I could see it in her posture, how she sat behind her desk, her perfectly manicured fingers laced together, as if she had just closed $1 million deal. But it was her smile that caught my attention. It wasn't her usual, composed, corporate grin. No, this one was different, smug, self-satisfied, cruel. She had been waiting for me. I let the silence linger as I closed the door behind me. My pulse was calm, my face unreadable. I had learned long ago how to mask my emotions, how to maintain control even when the ground beneath me was shifting. "Congratulations, Jamie," she said, her tone almost playful, as if this were a joke, as if she were about to deliver an unbelievable punchline. "Your hard work paid off. I'm promoting my boyfriend, Steve, instead of you. He's more of a team player." The words hit me like a hammer to the chest, a weight pressing deep into the pit of my stomach. But I didn't react. I didn't give her the satisfaction. I simply stood there, absorbing the blow. 5 years. 5 years of sacrifice, of working long hours, skipping vacations, missing family gatherings, all to build her company, to prove my worth, to create something meaningful. I had poured my heart into this job, into this business, into her, and now she sat across from me, acting as if it had all been a joke, a game. The worst part, she wasn't even ashamed. Her eyes showed no guilt, no hesitation, only triumph. She had planned this, and she expected me to break. Steve, I should have known. Steve, who had conveniently climbed the corporate ladder at warp speed. Steve, who laughed too easily, who always seemed to be in the right place at the right time, who dodged responsibility when things went south, but took credit when they went well. Steve, who was now taking my promotion. I exhaled slowly, not letting the anger show on my face. If she was expecting an outburst, she would be disappointed. If she wanted me to crumble, to beg, to fight, she was mistaken. Without a word, I reached into my pocket and pulled out a crisp, white envelope. It had been in my desk for weeks, ready. Deep down, I had known something like this was coming. I placed it on her desk, right on top of her pristine stack of reports. I slid it forward with controlled precision, my fingers releasing it with a sense of finality. "I understand," I said simply. "Here's my resignation letter." Her expression shifted subtly, but I caught it, the slight furrow of her brows, the hesitation in her fingers as she reached for the envelope. She hadn't expected this. She thought she had all the power. She thought she was in control. She thought I needed this job more than they needed me. She was wrong. I stood there, watching as she opened the envelope, her nails tapping softly against the paper. She unfolded the document inside, her eyes scanning the words, first quickly, then slower, her expression shifting ever so slightly. Her lips parted, her back stiffened, her smug confidence wavered. I didn't move. I didn't say anything. I just waited. because she hadn't just found my resignation letter inside that envelope. She had found something else, a report, a very specific report. One that detailed the revolutionary project management system I had been working on for the past 3 years. A system that streamlined productivity, reduced inefficiencies, and, most importantly, made companies millions. A system she had ignored. A system I had patented 6 months ago. Her fingers trembled slightly as she flipped through the pages, realization dawning. I watched, almost amused, as she tried to piece it all together. "Jamie," she started, her voice softer now, uncertain. "Why didn't you tell us about this before?" I let out a small, humorless chuckle. "I did. 3 times. You dismissed it." Her face paled. She shuffled the papers, her mind racing, trying to find a loophole, trying to regain control of the situation. "You patented it," she whispered. 6 months ago, I confirmed. She inhaled sharply. That was when I saw it, the first crack in her armor. The moment she realized she had miscalculated. For years she had belittled my ideas, pushed me aside, prioritized politics over innovation. And now she was seeing the consequences. She straightened, her shoulders, her voice carefully controlled when she spoke next. "Jamie, let's be reasonable. We can match whatever offer you've gotten, maybe even do better." I laughed, a genuine, full-bodied laugh. "Ashley," I said, finally calling her by her name for the first time in this conversation. "It's not about money." She opened her mouth to argue, but I didn't let her. "It's about respect," I continued, "something I never got here." Her lips pressed together tightly. She knew I was right. I'd spent years being overlooked, being used, being underestimated. And now, when she finally realized my worth, it was too late. I buttoned my jacket, adjusting my watch as I took a step back. "You and Steve enjoyed the promotion," I said smoothly, my voice dripping with finality. "I'm sure you'll do great without me." And with that, I turned and walked out of her office. I didn't need to look back to know what was happening. I didn't need to hear her reaction to know she was panicking, because in the end, she had played the game wrong. She thought she was getting the last laugh. She thought she had all the power. But what she didn't realize was that I had been playing a game of my own. And now I was winning. I walked out of my wife's office with my head held high, my stride purposeful, my emotions locked away behind a calm, composed exterior. The office buzzed with whispers. Eyes flickered toward me from behind computer screens, over cubicle walls, from glass-walled conference rooms where my so-called colleagues pretended to work but were undoubtedly discussing what had just happened. They all thought I'd be devastated. They thought I would storm out in anger, demand explanations, beg for reconsideration. They thought I would crumble because this job, this position, had been my life. But they were wrong. Because what none of them knew, what even Ashley had failed to realize, was that I had been preparing for this moment for 3 years. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. I walked through the office, past the break room where Steve was probably gloating over his so-called victory, past the HR desk where they would soon process my resignation, past the rows of desks where employees pretended to work while shooting me sympathetic glances. Let them whisper. Let them think I had lost. They had no idea what was coming. As I reached my desk, I pulled out an empty box and began packing my things. My hands moved methodically, picking up framed photos, a few books, and a couple of personal items that had accumulated over the years. I didn't have much here, just enough to remind me that at one point I had actually cared about this place. I had poured my soul into this company, given it everything, spent years trying to build something meaningful, only to be discarded the moment it suited them. But that was their mistake, because while they had been busy playing office politics, I had been working on something far more valuable. I glanced at the thick folder in my bag, the blueprint for the project management system I had spent 3 years perfecting. It was designed to revolutionize workflow efficiency, streamline operations, and eliminate the very problems that companies like Evermark struggled with daily. Ashley had ignored it. Steve had probably never even heard of it. And now, I owned it. I had patented it 6 months ago. I had spent countless nights refining it, testing it, improving it, making sure it was perfect, while Ashley and Steve had been busy playing their little games. I had been building something real, and the best part, I already had buyers lined up. I could have launched it under Evermark's name. I could have handed it over to them and changed the entire industry under their brand. But why would I do that? Why would I hand them my masterpiece when they had just proven they didn't value me? If they didn't want me, they didn't get my system either. I was taking it somewhere else. As I packed up the last of my things, I heard footsteps approaching. I didn't need to look up to know who it was. Steve. I could feel his presence before he even spoke. That irritating, smug energy of his, the kind that made me want to roll my eyes even when he wasn't saying anything. "No hard feelings, buddy," he said, his voice dripping with fake sympathy. I took my time closing my box, making sure every last detail was in place before I finally turned to him. Steve stood there, arms crossed, a ridiculous smirk on his face, the kind of smirk that told me he thought he had won. He had no idea. I tilted my head slightly, studying him, the way he radiated arrogance, the way he carried himself like a man who had earned something, when in reality he had been handed everything. I smiled at him, not a forced smile, not an angry one, a genuine, amused smile. "None at all," I said. "I'm sure you'll do great." Steve blinked, clearly surprised. He had expected me to be bitter, to lash out, to show some sign that I was broken, but I wasn't. I was free. Steve shrugged, clearly dismissing whatever unease he felt. He probably thought I was just being a good sport. He had no idea. As he walked away, I closed my laptop bag and picked up my box. This chapter of my life was over. But the next one was going to be legendary. That evening, I sat in my apartment, my laptop open, the dim glow of the screen reflecting off the whiskey glass in my hand. Emails were already flooding in. Investors, industry leaders, people who had heard whispers about my system and were eager to get a piece of it. And then, an email that made my breath still for a moment, from Noah Grant, CEO of Westbridge Industries. Westbridge wasn't just another corporation. They were one of the biggest names in the industry. Their reach was global, their influence unmatched. I clicked on the email. "Jamie, I heard you left Evermark. We need to talk." "Coffee tomorrow?" Short. Director. Powerful. I leaned back, my mind racing. Westbridge wasn't just a company. It was the company. The kind of place that respected innovation, that nurtured talent, that paid attention. And now they wanted to talk to me. I picked up my phone and typed out my response. "See you at 9. I set my phone down, exhaling slowly, a smirk forming on my lips. Ashley had spent years ignoring my ideas. Now, she was about to see just how big of a mistake that was. She thought Steve's promotion was her victory. She thought pushing me out had secured her future. She thought she had won. She had no idea. Tomorrow, I would sit across from one of the most powerful CEOs in the industry. Tomorrow, I would begin the next chapter of my career, one where I was no longer just an employee. Tomorrow, I would take the first step toward building something far bigger than Evermark had ever imagined. And Ashley would soon realize exactly what she had lost. I took a slow sip of my whiskey, the warmth spreading through my chest, and leaned back into my chair. Because while Evermark was busy celebrating Steve's promotion, I was about to change the game entirely. The next morning, I arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early, not because I was eager, but because I wanted to control the environment. I wanted to choose my seat, to have a moment to observe, to settle into the space with confidence. This wasn't just a casual coffee meeting. This was a power move, and I intended to play it perfectly. I ordered a black coffee, no cream, no sugar. The bitterness suited my mood. The cafe was sleek and modern, filled with early morning professionals tapping away at their laptops, having hush business discussions, strategizing their next big deal. Just another day in the corporate jungle. I chose a table near the window, giving me a clear view of the entrance. The moment Noah Grant walked in, I wanted to be the first thing he saw. He arrived exactly on time, not a minute early, not a minute late. That alone told me something about him. He was precise, methodical, a man who respected structure. Noah Grant was in his late 40s, tall, well-groomed, with an effortless confidence that only came from running an empire. Westbridge Industries wasn't just another company. It was a giant, a leader in tech innovation, project management, and global business solutions. And now he wanted to talk to me. I stood as he approached, offering a firm handshake. His grip was solid, his eyes sharp, assessing. "Jamie," he greeted, "glad you could make it." "Of course," I replied smoothly. "I appreciate the invitation." We sat, and he wasted no time. "I won't sugarcoat this," he said, leaning forward slightly. "I know about your resignation. I know Evermark just handed a major promotion to a guy who, frankly, I wouldn't trust to manage a lemonade stand. And I know you've been sitting on something big." I took a sip of my coffee, letting his words settle. He was testing me, pushing for a reaction. I gave him nothing. "Go on," I said evenly. He smiled slightly, clearly appreciating my composure. "Your system," he said. "I've heard whispers about it. A project management tool that optimizes efficiency, reduces redundancies, and streamlines operations at an industry-wide level. Evermark was blind to what they had, but I'm not. I want to know what it does. And more importantly, I want to know if you're willing to bring it to Westbridge." I let a slow smirk cross my face. "You've done your homework." "That's my job," he said simply. I leaned back in my chair, my fingers tapping against my coffee cup. "It's not just a tool," I said. "It's a game changer. Companies lose millions every year to inefficiency, bottlenecks, miscommunication, outdated processes. My system doesn't just track progress. It analyzes patterns, predicts obstacles, and adapts in real time. It turns workflow into something predictable, scalable, and foolproof." Noah's eyes flickered with interest. "And you patented it." It wasn't a question. He already knew the answer. 6 months ago, I confirmed. which means Evermark has no rights to it. They ignored it. They ignored me. And now they don't get to have it. Noah's smile widened slightly, the kind of smile that said he appreciated the vengeance in my tone. I like the way you think, he said, and I like what you've built. I want it. I took another sip of my coffee. That depends, I said smoothly, on what you're offering. This was the moment when everything shifted. I wasn't just a guy looking for a job. I wasn't just another former employee looking to land on his feet. I was the asset here, and Noah Grant knew it. He reached into his briefcase and slid a folder across the table. Take a look, he said. I opened it. Base salary, triple what I was making at Evermark. Equity, 10% stake in Westbridge's next innovation sector. Title, Vice President of Strategic Development. Full creative control over my systems integration. I kept my face neutral, but inside, I was already calculating my next move. This was a kingmaker deal. It wasn't just a job, it was a seat at the table. I closed the folder and met his gaze. I have 2 conditions, I said. He raised an eyebrow, intrigued. First, I continued, I want full autonomy over how this system is implemented. No bureaucracy, no corporate red tape. I run it my way. Noah nodded. Done. Second, I smiled, I want the press release to state clearly that Evermark had the opportunity to implement the system and chose to pass on it. Noah chuckled. You really want to twist the knife, don't you? They underestimated me, I said. I just want to make sure they realize exactly what they lost. Noah leaned back, considering me. Then he extended his hand. Welcome to Westbridge, Jamie. I shook his hand, sealing the deal. This wasn't just a career move. This was payback. That evening, I walked into my apartment feeling lighter than I had in years. For so long, I had played by Evermark's rules, let Ashley dictate my value, let a corrupt system decide what I was worth. But now, I was the one making the rules. My phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, an email from Ashley. I smirked, already knowing what it would say before I even opened it. Jamie, I think we may have made a mistake. Let's talk. I didn't reply. Instead, I drafted an email to Noah, looking forward to the press release. Make sure Evermark's name is in bold. Then I set my phone down, poured myself a drink, and leaned back into my chair, staring out over the city skyline. Ashley thought she had beaten me. She thought she had secured her future. But now, she was about to realize just how wrong she was. I wasn't just moving on. I was moving up. 2 weeks later, on my last official day at Evermark, I walked into the office for the final time. The atmosphere felt different. There was a tension in the air, a subtle shift in the way people looked at me, some with curiosity, some with concern, and others, especially those who had always sided with Ashley, with thinly concealed panic. I wasn't supposed to leave like this. I was supposed to be broken. I was supposed to be licking my wounds, searching for a new job, regretting ever standing up for myself. But instead, I was walking out of here a king, and they had no idea what was about to hit them. I took my time, clearing out the last few things from my desk, keeping my movements unhurried. Let them wonder, let them whisper, let them realize too late what they had done. Then, just as I expected, an email popped up on my screen. Subject: final meeting, CEO's office, Ashley, right on cue. I exhaled slowly, then stood, adjusting my jacket before making my way to her office. The walk felt different now. It was the same office, the same hallways, the same people, But everything had changed, because now I was untouchable. I stepped inside without knocking. She was sitting behind her desk, but this time the smug smile was gone. For the first time in years, I saw something I never thought I'd see on her face: doubt. She held my resignation letter in one hand, but what truly caught my attention was the document in her other hand, the report I had included in my resignation letter. She had finally read it, and now she understood what she had lost. "Jamie," she started, her voice different this time, controlled, careful. "Why didn't you tell us about the system before?" I let out a quiet chuckle, shaking my head slightly. "I did, 3 times. You dismissed it." Her face paled. I watched as she shuffled through the pages, her fingers trembling slightly. She knew what she was looking at. She wasn't just realizing that she had ignored something valuable. She was realizing that she had ignored something that could have saved Evermark. Her voice dropped to something almost desperate. "You patented it." I nodded. 6 months ago. Silence stretched between us, the kind of silence that made people reel. I recognized just how badly they had messed up. Finally, she exhaled and straightened her shoulders, trying to regain some control. Too late. "Jamie," she said, her voice carefully controlled, "let's be reasonable. We can match whatever offer you've got, maybe even do better." I smiled. She was scrambling now. "It's not about money, Ashley," I said. "It's about respect." Her jaw clenched. She hated hearing that. For years, she had assumed I would always be there, always giving to the company without asking for anything in return. She had treated me as replaceable, and now she was realizing just how irreplaceable I actually was. "Jamie, we can—" "No," I cut in smoothly, my voice firm but calm. "You had your chance. 3 years, 3 separate pitches. I sat in this very office, and you shot me down every single time. You said it wasn't feasible. You said we weren't ready for that level of change. And now—" I gestured toward the document in her hand. "Now, you're finally reading it, because I'm leaving." She didn't speak, but I could see it in her face. The regret, the realization, the panic. I stood, adjusting my jacket, giving her one last look. "Enjoy your promotion," I said, with a knowing smirk. "You and Steve are going to need all the luck you can get." And with that, I walked out for the last time. That night, I sat in my new office at Westbridge, overlooking the city skyline. A view 10 times better than anything Evermark ever gave me. My name was already on the door. My system was already being integrated into the company structure. I had an entire team under me, people who respected my vision, who understood my value. And the best part, I was just getting started. Then my phone buzzed. A text from an old colleague, Jake. "Ashley's in full meltdown mode. Steve has no idea what he's doing. The board is furious." I leaned back in my chair, laughing quietly to myself. The cracks were already starting to show, and I hadn't even made my next move yet. 3 months had passed since I left Evermark, and the fallout was even worse than I had predicted. It started as whispers, missed deadlines, unhappy clients, and minor errors that should have been easily preventable. Then, those whispers grew louder. Projects collapsed, clients walked away, investors panicked. And at the center of it all, Steve, the man Ashley had chosen over me. The man who had smirked as I packed up my desk, as if he had won some great victory. The man who had no idea how deep he was in over his head. And now, he was drowning. I leaned back in my chair, scrolling through the latest industry news. Evermark Incorporated faces Client exodus amid efficiency crisis. Stock down 30%. The headline alone was enough to make me smirk, but it was the article that really made it worth reading. I skimmed through it, my eyes catching on key phrases. Several longtime clients have cited severe project mismanagement since the departure of a key executive, leading to significant delays and operational inefficiencies. I knew exactly who that key executive was, and so did Ashley. As I continued reading, I found a quote from one of Evermark's former clients, one I had personally managed during my time there. The quality of service at Evermark has deteriorated significantly. Projects that once ran like clockwork are now riddled with delays. It's like they lost the one thing holding them together. I exhaled through my nose, shaking my head slightly. They had lost me, and they were just now realizing what that meant. Across from me, my assistant, Claire, knocked lightly on the door before stepping in. Your 3 p.m. call with Westbridge's expansion team is in 10 minutes, she reminded me. Thanks, Claire. I'll be ready, I said, closing my laptop. As she turned to leave, she hesitated. Oh, one more thing, she added. You got a voicemail from someone at Evermark. I think it was one of the board members. Should I forward it to you? I smirked. No need, I said. I already know what they want. Evermark was falling apart, and now they were desperate. They thought I'd want to hear them out. They thought they still had leverage. They were wrong. Later that evening, I got a text from Jake, my former colleague at Evermark. Dude, you need to hear this. Call me. Curious, I dialed his number. Jake, I said when he picked up. What's going on? He let out a low whistle before speaking. Man, you would not believe the disaster unfolding over here. Ashley is losing it. Steve just resigned. I blinked. Wait, what? Yep, Jake said. He couldn't handle the pressure. The board basically threw him under the bus, blaming him for everything. He walked out this morning. No 2 weeks' notice, no farewell speech. Just gone. I let out a short laugh. So, let me get this straight, I said. Ashley gave him my promotion, and now he's running for the hills? Pretty much, Jake said. And dude, it gets worse. She's next. The board is done with her. Investors are threatening to pull funding unless there's a leadership restructure. I shook my head in amusement. And to think she was so sure that she had won, I muttered. Yeah, well, she's realizing now that she played herself, Jake said. And the worst part? She still doesn't get why it all fell apart. I chuckled. Of course she didn't. Ashley had spent years prioritizing office politics over real skill. She had played her game, rigged the system, made decisions based on personal favoritism rather than actual qualifications, and now she was paying the price. So what happens next? I asked. The board is scrambling, Jake said. They're looking for someone to come in and clean up the mess, and from what I hear, they want you. I rolled my eyes. Of course they did. After everything, after years of being overlooked, dismissed, and undervalued, now they needed me. But they were too late. Westbridge had already given me everything Evermark refused to, and I wasn't about to go backward. I assume Ashley hasn't reached out yet, I asked, though I already knew the answer. Not yet, Jake said, but give it time, she will, and when she did, I'd be ready. The next morning, I was sitting in my office when my phone vibrated, a new email. I already knew who it was from before I even looked. Ashley. I exhaled slowly, letting the moment settle before opening the message. Jamie, I think we may have made a mistake. I'd like to discuss an opportunity for you to return. Name your price. I smiled. Of course she wanted me back, but the problem was I wasn't for sale. I stared at the email for a long moment before typing out my response. Ashley, I appreciate the offer, but I'm exactly where I need to be. Best of luck, Jamie. Then, without another thought, I hit send. And just like that, the door to Evermark was officially closed. Forever. I leaned back in my chair, staring out at the city skyline, taking in the reality of my new life. Westbridge was thriving. My system was being rolled out globally. I had full control over my work, a team that respected me, and a salary that made Evermark's look like pocket change. And Evermark was bleeding out, and they had no one to blame but themselves. The best part? I was just getting started. It didn't take long. 2 days after I sent my final email to Ashley, my phone started ringing. At first, I ignored it. I let it go to voicemail, letting her desperation fester. She wasn't used to being ignored. She was used to controlling the conversation, being the one people had to impress, the one making the decisions. But now she was the one chasing after me. I let it ring again and again. Then a new email popped up in my inbox. Subject, urgent. Let's talk. I smirked before clicking it open. Jamie, I know things ended on bad terms, but I really think we should discuss this. Evermark is willing to negotiate. Whatever you want, we can make it work. Just take a meeting. Please, please. I never thought I'd see Ashley beg. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the email, letting it sit there for a moment. I had two choices. I could ignore her entirely, let her twist in the wind, let Evermark continue its downward spiral until it was nothing but a cautionary tale in the industry. Or I could play the game one last time. I drummed my fingers on my desk, considering my options. Then I made my decision. I picked up my phone, scrolled through my missed calls, and finally I called her back. She answered immediately, as if she had been staring at her phone, waiting. Jamie, she breathed, the tension thick in her voice. Ashley, I said smoothly. There was a pause, a hesitation. She was used to having the upper hand, used to me being the one fighting for her attention. But now the dynamic had flipped. Thank you for calling me back, she finally said. I know you're busy, but I really think we should talk. I gathered that from the 5 missed calls in your email, I said dryly. Another pause. She hated this. She hated that she had to convince me. Jamie, she said, her voice lowering into something carefully controlled, like she was trying to regain some authority. You know Evermark isn't the same without you. Things have changed. That's one way to put it, I said, tilting my head. Steve is gone, she continued, trying to sound unaffected, but I could hear the strain. The board is looking for new leadership. There's an opportunity here, a big one, and I think it should be you. I nearly laughed. 3 months ago, she had looked me in the eye and told me I wasn't a team player, that I wasn't right for a leadership position, and now she wanted me to save her. Interesting, I said, dragging the word out. Jamie, listen. I don't think I need to, I interrupted. I think I already know exactly what's happening. Evermark is falling apart. The board is panicking, and you're about to lose everything. So now you want the guy you dismissed to come back and fix it. Silence. A long, glaring silence. Finally, she spoke again, her voice tight. It's not that simple. Oh, I think it is. Another silence. This time she exhaled sharply, the sound of frustration barely concealed. Jamie, she said, softer this time. I know we made mistakes. I know I made mistakes, but we need you. The company needs you. Just come in for a conversation. That's all I'm asking." I tapped my fingers against my desk, letting the moment stretch out. She needed me to say yes. She needed me to give her hope. Instead, I smiled and said, "No." A sharp intake of breath. "Jamie, be reasonable." "Oh, I'm being very reasonable," I said smoothly. "See, I did my part. I gave Evermark everything, and you threw it away. You made your choice. Now you have to live with it." "I can fix this," she pushed. "We can fix this." "Ashley," I said, my voice calm but firm, "there is no we anymore." Silence. Finally, she let out a slow exhale, defeated. "You're really not going to help?" she asked, her voice quiet now. "No," I said simply. A beat passed, then another, and then she hung up. No goodbye, no last attempt to persuade me. Just silence. I stared at my phone for a moment before setting it down, shaking my head with amusement. Ashley had always thought she was untouchable. She'd spent years thinking she was the smartest person in the room. And now, she had finally learned what it felt like to lose. That night, I got another text from Jake. "Ashley looked like a ghost in today's meeting. It's over for her, man. The board is already talking about replacing her." I smiled to myself. Of course they were. Ashley had built her entire career on playing politics, not actual skill. And now she was realizing the hard way that when everything collapsed, there was no one left to protect her. Because, in the end, she wasn't as untouchable as she thought, and I had just proven it. The downfall was quicker than I expected. Evermark had been teetering on the edge for months, but after that phone call with Ashley, I knew the final blow was coming, and when it did, it would be brutal. I arrived at Westbridge early that morning, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, scrolling through the latest industry news, and there it was, the headline that would send shockwaves through the entire corporate world. Evermark CEO Ashley Dawson removed after leadership crisis. Board announces immediate restructuring. I exhaled slowly, leaning back in my chair as I read the article. Ashley had been fired. They had finally done it. The board had cut her loose to save themselves. I skimmed through the details, my smirk growing with every paragraph. After months of financial decline, client losses, and internal turmoil, Evermark's board of directors has announced the removal of CEO Ashley Dawson, effective immediately. Sources close to the company indicate that board members had grown frustrated with Dawson's inability to stabilize operations following the departure of key executives. Dawson's tenure was marked by a controversial promotion that many industry experts believe contributed to the company's downward spiral. I laughed under my breath. That controversial promotion was Steve, the very same Steve who had fled the company when the heat turned up, leaving Ashley alone to deal with the fallout. Karma was beautiful. As I reached the bottom of the article, a familiar name caught my eye. Industry experts speculate that Evermark may attempt to recruit former executive Jamie Carter to aid in the company's restructuring efforts. Those sources indicate Carter has already found success in his new role at Westbridge Industries. I rolled my eyes. Recruit me? Again, these people never learned. Just then, my office phone rang. I already knew who it would be before I even answered. "Jamie Carter speaking." "Jamie." The voice on the other end was calm, professional, but calculated. It was Mark Caldwell, Evermark's chairman. the man who had once barely acknowledged my presence at meetings, and now he was calling me personally. "Mark," I said smoothly, leaning back in my chair, "what can I do for you?" "I'm sure you've seen the news," he started, his tone neutral. "I wanted to reach out personally to discuss an opportunity." "Let me guess," I said. "Evermark wants me to come back and clean up the mess Ashley left behind." A brief pause. "We believe you're uniquely qualified to help restore Evermark's reputation," he said. I almost laughed. They weren't even trying to hide it. "Jamie, let's be honest," Mark continued. "You were the backbone of this company. Losing you was a mistake. I won't deny that." I raised an eyebrow. "Funny," I said, "because when I worked there, no one seemed to see my value. But now that everything's falling apart, suddenly I'm the backbone. We're prepared to make it worth your while," he said, ignoring my sarcasm. "A leadership position, full autonomy over operational changes, double your previous salary." I let out a low chuckle. "Mark, let me stop you right there," I said. "I'm going to save you some time and say no." Silence. Then he sighed. "I understand why you feel that way," he said. "But Jamie, this isn't just about us. Think about the employees who are still here, the ones who depended on you." I narrowed my eyes. The guilt trip, that was their final play. They wanted me to believe that coming back would be some grand act of mercy, that I would be the hero returning to save the people who had once ignored me. Not happening. "The employees who are still there," I echoed. "You mean the same people who stood by while Ashley promoted Steve over me? The same ones who looked the other way when I was forced out?" Another long pause. "Jamie," Mark said carefully, "we need someone who understands the company, someone who can fix what's broken." I smirked. "You already had that person, Mark," I said. "You just didn't appreciate him until it was too late." More silence. He knew I was right. "I appreciate the offer," I said after a moment, "but I'm exactly where I need to be." Then, before he could say another word, I ended the call. That night, I was sitting in my apartment when my phone buzzed with a new text from Jake. "Ashley called me today. She's not doing well." I stared at the message for a moment before replying. "Not my problem." Jake responded almost immediately. "Damn, dude. No mercy." I exhaled slowly before typing my next message. "She had no mercy for me when she promoted Steve. She made her bed. Now she has to lie in it." This time, there was a long pause before Jake finally responded. Fair enough. I set my phone down and leaned back, staring out the window at the city lights. Ashley had spent years believing she was untouchable, believing she was the smartest person in the room, believing she could manipulate people and come out on top. And now she had been removed, discarded, forgotten, just like she had done to me. And the best part, I didn't even have to lift a finger. The universe had done the work for me. A week after Evermark officially removed Ashley, I was in my office at Westbridge, reviewing expansion plans for the rollout of my system across multiple industries. Everything was moving fast, faster than I had imagined. Westbridge was thriving. Our efficiency metrics were breaking industry records. Clients were lining up, and the press was all over it. Every tech and business publication was talking about how Westbridge had revolutionized workflow management overnight, and at the heart of it all, this was what I had always envisioned, not being a pawn in someone else's corporate game, not waiting for approval from people who didn't respect me, but being in control, calling the shots, leading. I was exactly where I needed to be. Then my assistant, Claire, knocked on my office door. "Jamie," she said, "I just got a call from Evermark's board. They're asking for a meeting." I didn't even look up from my screen. "Tell them I'm not interested." "I did," Claire said, "but they insisted. They said they have a proposal that demands serious consideration." I finally looked up, narrowing my eyes. They weren't giving up. They were desperate. And if I was being honest, I was curious. "Fine," I said. "Schedule it. Let's hear what they have to say." 2 days later, I walked into a private conference room at Evermark's headquarters. I hadn't stepped foot in this building since the day I walked out, and now I was walking in on my own terms. Mark Caldwell, the board chairman, stood to greet me as I entered. "Jamie," he said, forcing a smile. "Good to see you." "Wish I could say the same," I replied smoothly, taking a seat across from him. He didn't even flinch. He knew I wasn't here for pleasantries. Also in the room were 3 other board members, people who had barely acknowledged me back when I worked here. Now they looked like they were about to beg. Mark cleared his throat and slid a folder across the table. "I'll get straight to the point," he said. "We want you to come back to Evermark as our new CEO." I stared at him for a long moment before laughing. I actually laughed. I leaned back in my chair, shaking my head. "Let me get this straight," I said. "You fired Ashley, your golden girl, and now you want me, the guy she forced out, to fix the mess she left behind." Mark didn't even try to deny it. "Yes." I picked up the folder and flipped through it. Their offer was massive. Triple my old salary, full executive control, a huge stock package. They weren't just asking me to return, they were begging me. I closed the folder and set it aside, my expression unreadable. "Why should I even consider this?" I asked. Mark leaned forward, his voice lower now. "Because, Jamie, Evermark is still one of the biggest names in the industry. And if you take the reins, you'd be running your own empire. You wouldn't just be fixing a broken company. You'd be shaping its future, your future." I studied him carefully. He was good. He knew how to sell it. But the problem was, I wasn't buying. "Let me ask you something, Mark," I said. "What happens if I say no?" He didn't even blink. "Then Evermark collapses." I tilted my head. "And that's my problem? Why?" Silence. Mark sighed, rubbing his temples. "Look, Jamie, I know we handled things poorly before. I won't sugarcoat it. But this is bigger than personal grudges. Evermark needs a leader, a real one, and we're willing to make it worth your while." I sat there for a moment, tapping my fingers against the table. I could feel the weight of the moment. They had once dismissed me like I was nothing. Now they were offering me the keys to the kingdom. And maybe some part of me should have wanted that, but I didn't, because Evermark didn't deserve me. They had never deserved me. And now they were realizing that. Too late. I stood up, adjusting my jacket. "I appreciate the offer," I said, "but I have to decline." Mark frowned. "Jamie, Westbridge gave me everything Evermark never did," I cut in. And I'm not about to trade that for a sinking ship." Silence. The board members exchanged glances, realizing that they had already lost me. I picked up the folder with their offer, flipped it open, and tore the contract in half before tossing it back onto the table. "Best of luck," I said smoothly. "You're going to need it." And then I walked out again, only this time I wasn't leaving as an employee. I was leaving as the man who had won. That night, I was in my office at Westbridge, sipping a glass of whiskey, when my phone buzzed. A message from Jake. "Dude, just heard about the meeting. You really told them to go to hell." I smirked, taking another sip before typing back. "Not in those words, but yeah." Jake's response was immediate. "Damn, Ashley must be losing her mind." I exhaled slowly, staring at my phone. Ashley. I hadn't heard from her since she was fired. And honestly, I didn't need to, because I already knew exactly what she was thinking. She thought she had secured her future when she chose Steve over me. She thought I would be nothing without Evermark. She thought I would come crawling back. But now she was watching from the sidelines as I thrived. She was irrelevant, and I was just getting started. The day after I rejected Evermark's desperate offer, I arrived at my office feeling lighter than ever. There was something deeply satisfying about knowing I had all the power now, something Ashley and her board had never believed possible. For years, they had seen me as just another employee, a piece of the corporate machine. Now they were watching as I thrived without them, while their empire crumbled into dust. The news of my rejection spread fast. By noon, I had 5 different emails from industry journalists asking for a statement. Westbridge's PR team even asked if I wanted to do an official press release. "Should we address the rumors?" Claire, my assistant, asked when she stepped into my office. I sipped my coffee, considering it. "No," I said finally. "Let them wonder," because that was the best part. Evermark wasn't just falling apart. They were scrambling to understand why. They had assumed I would jump at the chance to return. They had thought I was still the same man who spent years waiting for their approval. They had no idea who I had become, and now I was untouchable. That evening, I got a call from Jake. "Man," he said, "I don't think you realize just how bad things are over here." "Oh?" I said, leaning back in my chair, intrigued. "Ashley's been calling everyone," he said. "She even tried reaching out to old clients, trying to convince them to come back. But the problem is, they don't trust her anymore." I finished for him. Exactly. The reputation hit was too big, and with you at Westbridge, they all know who the real brains behind the operation was. I smirked. "So what's the next move?" I asked. "You're going to love this," Jake said. "The board is looking for a new CEO, and guess who they just reached out to?" I already knew the answer before he said it. "Steve." "Yep," Jake confirmed. "The same guy who ran the company into the ground. They're so desperate they're trying to bring him back." I let out a slow chuckle. They never learn, do they? "Nope," Jake said, "and that's why they're going to sink." And he was right. Because the truth was, Evermark's biggest mistake wasn't just losing me. It was proving to the world that they didn't value the right people, and now they were paying for it. That weekend, I attended a major tech and business conference on behalf of Westbridge. Every major player in the industry was there: investors, CEOs, rising entrepreneurs. The perfect place to cement my reputation. As I walked through the venue, shaking hands and exchanging business cards, I could feel the difference. People weren't just acknowledging me. They were seeking me out. I had become someone that mattered. Then, as I turned the corner toward the networking lounge, I spotted her, Ashley. She was standing near the bar, a drink in hand, wearing a forced smile as she spoke to a group of executives. And the moment she saw me, her entire expression shifted. Her confident facade cracked. For the first time, I saw something I never thought I'd see from Ashley. Defeat. I walked past without stopping, barely acknowledging her, but I could feel her eyes following me. She was watching me the way someone watches a ghost from their past, with a mixture of regret, disbelief, and something close to fear. Because she knew I had won, and she had become irrelevant. Later that night, I was back in my hotel suite, sipping whiskey and reading through my emails when a new message popped up from Ashley Dawson. Subject: Can we talk? I stared at the screen for a moment, letting out a slow exhale. I could already guess what it said. I clicked it open. Jamie, I know things didn't end well between us, and I know I don't deserve a response. But I needed to reach out. I've made mistakes. I see that now, and I know I can't change the past, but I just want you to know. I'm sorry. I should have valued you more. I should have listened. I don't expect anything from you. I just needed to say it. Ashley apologizing. I never thought I'd see the day. I sat there for a moment, staring at the words, wondering if I should even respond. Then finally, I did. Ashley, I appreciate the message, but some mistakes can't be undone. Good luck. And with that, I closed the laptop, took another sip of whiskey, and let the past fade away. Because the best revenge was knowing that I never needed it. I had already won. The morning after Ashley's email, I sat in my office at Westbridge, staring out over the city skyline. It was a perfect morning, the kind of morning that reminded me just how much had changed in such a short amount of time. Just 6 months ago, I was stuck in a company that didn't value me, working for a woman who saw me as replaceable, waiting for an opportunity that would never come. And now I was leading an industry revolution. Westbridge had officially launched my project management system nationwide, and the results were staggering. Productivity had skyrocketed. Companies were saving millions in wasted hours. Investors were pouring in, eager to be a part of something that was changing the way businesses operated. I had built something that mattered, and best of all, I had done it on my own terms. As I leaned back in my chair, Claire knocked on my door. Jamie, she said, I have the final numbers from the rollout. Thought you'd want to see them. She handed me a folder. I flipped it open, scanning the figures. Client acquisition, up 230%. Efficiency ratings, at a record high. Industry adoption, accelerating faster than projections. I smiled. This is huge, I said, setting the folder down. Claire smirked. I figured you'd like it. She hesitated for a moment before adding, Oh, and you got another email from Evermark, Mark Caldwell, again. Should I forward it? I let out a quiet laugh, shaking my head. No need, I said. I already know what it says. Evermark had lost everything, their credibility, their clients, their last chance at a future. And now they wanted me to come back and save them. But I wasn't in the business of rescuing people who had buried me. Ashley had learned that lesson the hard way, and now Evermark was about to learn it too. That evening, I attended an exclusive business gala hosted by Westbridge. The biggest names in the industry were there. It was a celebration of our success, of the impact we were making, of the future we were shaping. As I walked through the venue, shaking hands with executives, investors, and innovators, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: freedom. For so long, I had been fighting for recognition, for respect, for a seat at the table, and now I owned the damn table. As I sipped my whiskey, a familiar voice cut through the noise. Jamie. I turned, and there she was, Ashley. She looked different. The confidence, the smugness, The power she had once wielded so effortlessly, it was gone. She wasn't the queen of the corporate world anymore. She was just another guest at a party she no longer belonged to. "Didn't think I'd see you here," I said, swirling my drink. "Didn't think I'd have the courage to show up," she admitted, offering a small, tired smile. She hesitated, then exhaled. "Jamie, I just wanted to say it again. I'm sorry." I studied her for a moment, waiting for the catch, for the manipulation, the strategy, the power play. But this time, there wasn't one. She was just defeated. And somehow, that was more satisfying than any revenge could have been. "I know," I said simply. She nodded, as if accepting that was the best she could hope for. Then, with a final glance around the room, she stepped back and walked away. And that was the end of our story. As the night stretched on, I stood at the balcony overlooking the city. I had built my future. Man, this was my moment, my victory. And the best part, I hadn't just survived Evermark. I had outgrown it. I pulled out my phone and opened a new email draft. To Westbridge Board subject, next big expansion. Because while Ashley and Evermark faded into irrelevance, I was just getting started.